Hi, and thanks for joining us for another What's So Special About. Today, we're taking a closer look at one of the most influential engines to ever come out of Japan, Nissan's infamous RB. The RB story really started to gain momentum with the Nissan Skyline R32 GTR. This car's been spoken about with near mythical reverence ever since the R32 took the Japanese automotive market by storm when it was launched in August of 1989. After 16 years without a GTR model, Nissan relaunched the Skyline GTR as a showcase for what was at the time the pinnacle of their performance technology. The R32 GTR features a multi-link suspension system, high-CAS all-wheel steering, and Nissan's Atessa all-wheel drive system. But the clear highlight was the heart of the beast, the RB26 DE-TT. 2.6 litre, 6-cylinder inline engine. Off the showroom floor, 276 horsepower and about 260 foot-pounds of torque. 0 to 60 mile an hour took 5.6 seconds, and they ran the quarter mile in around 13.9 seconds, which was pretty quick at the time. Legend has it that Nissan's chief engineer, Shuri Ito, didn't reveal to anyone, including his own team members, that this car would actually wear the GTR badge until it was debuted. The R32 race cars had great success in the FIA's Group A series, both at home in Japan, where the blue Calsonic sponsored examples become a motoring icon, where in Australia, the Aussie press nicknamed the fire-breathing monsters Godzilla when they dominated the local Ford and Holden V8s. And with that, the legend was born. Next came the R33. It was an evolution of the R32 model, and it was first displayed at the 1993 Tokyo Motor Show. But it wasn't officially launched until January of 1995. Still powered by the RB26, the R33 raced at Le Mans in the same year, finishing the grueling event 10th overall and 5th in its class. So, while the R33 is often mocked for its rounded sort of boat-like appearance, it certainly doesn't perform like one. The R33 has gained a strong and loyal following of its own, in particular the limited edition Nismo 400R variant. Now, that thing's got 400 horsepower and less than 50 of them were ever produced, so it's certainly a rare beast. Next came the R34, which would turn out to be the last GTR powered by the RB26 DE-TT. While horsepower was officially rated at 280 brake horsepower, it would appear the car was more powerful than Nissan actually advertised, with some examples making closer to about 330 horsepower. The R34 made a formidable race car, with the Pennzoil Nismo GTR winning the Japanese Grand Touring Championship in 1999. The R34 clearly benefited from the racing and testing done with the two previous generations of GTR. Still had the same advertised power, but turbo lag was reduced, it made more torque, and it had that beautiful new 6-speed manual transmission, which replaced the earlier series ones that had the 5-speed. The body was also stiffer, the aerodynamics were improved, and several weight-saving measures were employed. So things like the use of a carbon fibre rear diffuser it's pretty amazing. The car was also shorter, as was the front overhang. The R34 GTR was also featured in several of the Fast and the Furious movies, so that really gave the American car enthusiasts a taste for this unobtainable Japanese Godzilla. Much of the Skyline range from the R31 to R34 in both coupe and four-door body shapes, whether rear-wheel drive or all-wheel drive, also benefited from the RB engine. As did a lot of the not-so-well-known Nissans like the Stagias, Laurels, Ceferos, and even the odd Nissan Patrol. Of course, I can't talk about RBs without mentioning the Holden Vl Commodore. Holden's answer to Australia's stricter emission laws in the late 80s was to fit an RB30. The VL, powered by the single cam variant, which in turbo form made about 200 horsepower, gave it more grunt than the locally manufactured Holden V8 of the same era. This made the VL Turbo a favourite of both the police, highway patrol and car enthusiasts alike. So that's a bit of history in the RB series. So let's have a look at this one that I've got in front of me here and see what makes it so special. we take a look at the Nissan RB26, the first thing that we notice is the intake manifold. So air comes from the twin turbo system through a nice large front mounted intercooler found on the 32, 33 and the 34 models, up through here, but there's no throttle body at the front here. It's got 6 individual throttles mounted right next to the cylinder head here. So as we crack the throttle, we'll get a nice close up of this and we can see each throttle, a good size throttle opening in there. So the first thing is, it's got plenty of space for air to get through here. It's got 6 sequential injectors, so each injector fires individually from the factory. It's got direct fire ignition, so 1 coil per cylinder. Twin cam, so 1 cam for the inlet valves, 1 camshaft for the exhaust valves, and it's got 4 valves per cylinder, so 2 intake valves and 2 exhaust valves. While we're on this side of the engine, one of the things to have a good look at on the RB26 or the 4-wheel drive variants of the RB is the integrated front diff, which you'll find in the engine's oil sump. So it's mounted on the side here. There's a whole bunch of through bolts to the actual casting of the block. So the thing is on really, really strong. It's a super strong setup. It's got our drive shafts that go out to the front wheels, and then it's got the input from the prop shaft that comes from the center diff, which is located on the gearbox, which is normally hanging off the back of the engine. Now, the first thing that people normally do with their RB series engine is upgrade the factory turbochargers. Now, there's a lot of debate about whether twin turbo or single turbo is the right way to go. With the late model turbocharger technology now, so with billet wheels, everything getting lighter, everything spooling a whole lot earlier, my personal preference is a big single turbocharger on these that still make a huge amount of power, but you don't quite have the complexity over on the exhaust side of the engine, where when you're working with twin turbos on these things, working on the rear turbocharger is a real chore of a job. So if you can put a nice single on it that's going to support the power that you're after, it is 100% the right way to go. Now, once you've got your right size turbo on this thing, it's making the right power, rods, pistons, always a good thing to do. Head studs, you might want to fit camshafts. So all of these things are going to support the power that you want to make or help it to live as long as possible. One of the things with the GDR engine, or one of the Achilles heel, is the oil pump. Now, I don't know what they were thinking when they designed the oil pump for the mighty GDR engine. Some people say the accountants designed it and that was the last thing where they scrimped and saved. But the oil pumps on these things are definitely a time bomb. So you could just be giving it a hit at the racetrack, you'd be cruising it to the shop, you could just start it in your driveway, all of a sudden you hear that horrible bottom end knock and you know that your GDR oil pump has just fallen apart. Replacement oil pump gears are available, and nowadays they're all billet, so they're a whole lot stronger. A lot of the later oil pumps were actually wider in the drive, so that also avoids that shattering that you just don't want to see on your RB engine. So once you've got all of your engine hard parts sorted out, it's time for the tuning options. We do have quite a few for the popular RB engine. So the first one is, if you've got an R32, 33, 34 with this engine fitted, you've done all your mods, it's your street car, which if you're lucky enough to have a GDR street car, it's pretty amazing. Something like the Platinum Pro plug-in. So this thing's got the factory Nissen connector on it. You plug this thing in, it'll do all the factory features of the engine, it'll do all your aircon control, it'll do all your dash, it'll do your electronic boost control, and it'll do the tuning via this map sensor, meaning that you can remove the airflow meters if you'd like to. So our Pro plug-in series, direct plug-in if you've got your factory harness. If you've put this thing into a different model car, so you've done an engine conversion, or if you've stripped the factory harness out of your GDR because you're turning into a race car or you want to tidy it all up, you can also use the Elite 2500 series. So this unit has full control over the engine, it will control everything in the car as well. The difference is that you can wire a harness from scratch so that you don't need to use any of the factory wiring. Or we do also make a terminated harness that goes from this ECU out to all of the sensors, everything's terminated to length, and then you would wire it into the car. Alternatively, we also make a patch harness that goes from the Elite 2500 into a factory harness. Where you'll be going with the Elite 2500 series is if you need the more advanced features. So if this thing's a bit more than your daily driver and it is a race car and you want all the advanced features of the Elite series, that's probably the best way for you. Both of these systems will allow you to fit whatever sort of injectors you'd like. So pretty common now to be fitting 2000, 2200 cc or 220 pound injectors into these engines. Ignition system upgrades, things like replacing the factory older so they're getting on a little bit now. Ignition modules and coils are certainly have gone through a few heat cycles. So one of the most popular things to do is upgrade to the Nissen R35 GDR coil. So keeping it in the family, it's kind of nice. A lot of the late series connectors actually all just plug straight in. So thank you, Nissen, made it nice and easy to do an ignition upgrade. So put your R35 coils in and that's your full ignition upgrade. Some of these things have been known to make over 2,000 horsepower with factory R35 coils. Now, while we're talking tuning on the Nissan RB engine, we'd be crazy not to bring up the Nissen crank angle sensor, which is normally mounted in the front of the exhaust camshaft. Now, this is a fairly hotly contested debate. Nissen crank angle sensors are a really good thing. They sit on the front of the exhaust camshaft. They measure the engine's speed and the engine's position. However, once we start to make a bit more power out of the RB engine, the timing belt deflection starts to cause a problem where once that belt is deflecting because we've got huge horsepower, we've got a whole bunch of valve springs in here that are pushing up and down a lot firmer than the factory, all of a sudden that cam angle sensor isn't truly representing the crank angle. And we don't have a sensor on the crankshaft to measure true crank position. Now, this isn't too much of an issue when we've got a lower horsepower car. As soon as we start to step it up, it's normally a really good idea to fit a trigger system on the crankshaft of this engine so that we can measure the true crank angle. Now, this is probably a bit of a topic that I would like to cover in a different video, and I will make a different video on this to talk more about cam belt deflection and the differences between cam angle sensors and crankshaft sensors. I think that's probably a really important thing to talk about with the Nissan RB, because as you start to increase its power, the Nissen crank angle sensor is not always the best option. Now, while it's all well and good for me to sit here and tell you all about what I know about RB engines or what turbocharger combination I'd prefer, I thought it might be best to bring in one of my mates who's dealt with plenty of RB series engines in his time. So I've invited Andrew Hawkins from Motive DVD to come in, help us out with the do's and don'ts of building your RB engine. That way we can all learn a little bit from his experience and his knowledge with the RB engine. Andrew's made it down to Haltech HQ here and he's bought us a bit of a surprise. So Andrew, thanks so much for turning up. And first things first, tell me about this. This is awesome.
Well, I've been doing a lot of block research and development with Platinum Racing products, as people have probably seen on our YouTube channel. And obviously, the more research you do, you need to know more things. So Herman had this cut up so we could actually analyse the inside of RB blocks to obviously help, well, make them better.
So what is this thing? This is an RB block. What's it out of?
This is an 05U, so it's just a R32, R33, R34 GDR. Not sure exactly which one it came out of because we obviously got it from a wrecker. But it's just a normal base level RB26, not one of the improved ones.
Right. This would have given us so much information. I suppose because there's so many myths and so much internet magic surrounding this such a special type of engine. So cutting it up, you would have learned so much stuff, but I suppose before we get to that, we should probably first this is obviously like the top end stuff. So let's talk about say a GDR that we want to make 400, 450, 500 kilowatts. Tell us a little bit about what you would need to make that sort of power.
If you're just talking about the engine itself, obviously support gear is support gear to do it right. Just the engine itself, we found with all of our development and cross-referenced with lots of workshops, as soon as you want to go past 400 kilowatts at all four wheels, head gasket and head studs become a problem. The factory gasket doesn't seal and the head studs don't hold. And then you're pretty right with factory internals, honestly, until, look, I'm going to say 500 kilowatts, even though I've gone quite beyond that and so have some other guys on stock bottom ends. Realistically, I say 450, 500 kilowatts is when you need to start thinking about a lot more things.
Right, and in that, I'm sure there's no harm in it. If you really did, like if you're making 450, 500, like just for safety's sake, would you think, oh, it might be worth changing some parts, or don't worry about it?
I had completely standard from the gasket down, untouched, except for it had a baffle in the sump and an accumulator, just as a little bit of a precaution for more oil surge as opposed to a mechanical failure. The pump was fine, rods were fine all the way through to, you know, well over 700 horsepower at the wheels. So the myth that rods break at 500-600 horsepower is rubbish. If tuned well, driven properly, stock rods, stock pistons had no problems all the way to nearly 800 wheel horsepower.
Wow, yeah. That's a huge amount of power. Look, we're probably, the stock block stuff, mate, killing it.
I wouldn't recommend it to everyone though.
For me personally, I always like to have that little bit of insurance where I don't mind throwing a bit of money at a set of rods and a set of pistons.
Right.
Very particularly a set of rods, but while you're there, set of pistons, that way, because if you do have one of those unfortunate failures, to have a rod come through and clean up your RB block, depending on what country you are, that could be catastrophic. So a bit of insurance in rods and pistons probably can't hurt. But
there's the age for scenario as well. Some of them are just getting old as well. That's another big problem that we don't always factor in, is just age.
So now that we've talked about the I'm going to say stock bottom end, or the stock with a slight service bottom end, if we were planning on going 500 kilowatts onwards, like you guys have done so much development and you've obviously seen what's really going on with these things, can you tell us a little bit about, give us some of the common problems that we are going to see when we start trying to make over 500 kilowatts?
Well, these problems are obviously known, but there's a lot of myth and sort of misinformation surrounding them as well. Firstly, you've got the block itself is a problem, cracking on the outside and cracking of bores. The oil pump itself is a problem. And then the other one that we have to look at is actually just oil control. So that's sort of a separate issue to mechanically with the pump. You've got to control the oil in an RB.
Right, okay, well, while this thing's open, where the cracking, I suppose, we'll start with block cracking. Where does a block crack?
Okay, the most common place, and I'm not saying it's the only place, when you have a crack on the outside, it's right here in the middle, between cylinder 3 and 4, above that oil feed, they crack. And essentially that happens because a block twists, and if you can imagine grabbing a block and twisting it, where's it going to break? In the middle. And the other thing is GTRs have a sump that has a diff in it. So the diff and sump are all in one. So essentially you have a front diff attached to the block. That creates more twisting force. So you do find that a two-wheel drive 26 doesn't crack as easily as a four-wheel drive 26.
Yeah, right.
And you'll also find a car used for circuit racing may not crack a block, while one used for drag racing, way more likely. So if you look inside here as well, you can actually see how thin the material is, where that head stud goes down between 3 and 4, and where that the oil feed is. It's actually really quite thin in the block. So we actually had that as a theory. We thought potentially it's quite thin. Then when we cut it open, it's thin. Now, cracking of the bores is a totally different thing altogether. So all the testing we've done with Platinum, we've shown that these blocks actually suffer from a lot of core shift. And essentially what happens when they cast the block, the bores move around a little bit. So you actually have different size thickness to the bores, and you can get an RB26 that has a great bore where it's sort of 3.5 to 4 mil between the cylinders down the whole bore. But then you get another one that has, say, 5 mil on this side and 2.5 mil on this side. So if you have a thin bore, anything under 3, turn the power up, split a bore.
And when you talk about this core shift, can you tell me, like looking at the top, I suppose, of one of these, what's the core that you're talking about that's moving around?
It's actually the entire bore itself. It's not just like, because these obviously don't need a sleeve, they're a cast iron block. The entire actual bore itself moves around within the block. Generally, it's actually front to back. We find that the actual wall thickness on the cylinder, sort of each side, the thrust side and the opposing side, they're fine. The problem is always between cylinders, and that's where it happens. And it's actually usually slightly off. It's actually about sort of 20 degrees off from the centre. There's actually usually a thin spot that's there naturally. Combine that with core shift, and you'll always find every single time we've tested a block that split a bore, we've measured it, thin bore.
Yeah, right.
So you have to basically measure it before you build it. And that's what people don't do. I've actually been shocked how many workshops don't actually do a sonic test, measure the bore thickness before they build it. But we're finding now that more and more people are doing it, and yeah, that can be the key between breaking and not breaking.
The next part, myths or magic, oil pumps. What's the story? The oil pumps, there's different size oil pumps. Why do they break? How do they break? How do you stop them breaking?
Well, there's two types of pumps, short nose and long nose crank. Short nose was everything, I think, till August 91. In R32 was a short nose crank, August 91 onwards. So late model 32s have a long nose crank. And basically on the front of the crank, what drives the pump is either small or big. Small is bad, big is good.
Okay, so more drive surface on the later model engines.
Yeah, so on the early ones, they actually broke just from almost just looking at them. They really are that bad, the early model ones, but they actually developed the reputation for the late model ones. When they improved it, it's actually not that bad. Like I said, we've had a stock bottom end make nearly 800 horsepower at the tyres and do 6 years of work, but you have to drive around the problem. And essentially, it's shock loading. So anything that puts a shock load on that pump causes it to basically, you can imagine shock loading, it's moving back and forward on that drive, and that just makes them crack and break. So rev limiter, two-step, clutch kicks, launch control, anything that just puts huge shock loading onto the engine is what breaks it. So I had to drive around that for 6 years, so no rev limiter, very gentle on the clutch, I didn't use two-step or flat shift. I had to drive around the problem to stop it from breaking.
What about the oil flow from that? So the two separate parts,
two
pump,
separate.
And then there's a lot of breather torque and a lot of oil drain torque and all of that stuff. What's going on there? Why is this a myth, or what's the area? What's the problem?
Okay, so when you have a factory pump and factory flow, a factory sump kind of holds enough oil for it, and you can find that just having a baffle in the factory sump and having, rocker cover breathers is probably enough to control a GDR. Maybe not a circuit one, that gets a bit more complicated. But what happens is you upgrade your pump, it's not just stronger, it's got more flow. And why they got more flow? Well, RBs love oil pressure in the bearings to stay alive. So if you have more flow, what does it do to the sump? It empties the sump quicker. You cannot upgrade to an aftermarket oil pump that has more flow without upgrading your sump. You have to put a larger sump on. And obviously now you've got a larger sump, you've got more flow, and you've got probably some of the worst oil control of a factory engine in an RB26. You've got to actually stop it going to the head. So you have to put restrictors into the block to stop oil flow to the head. That helps keep it out of the head, keeps it hopefully in the block more. You have to put a head drain or a head breather, depending on what your attitude of how that works is a pretty important upgrade. You've got to have breathers in the rocker cover, and you've got to have a massive catch can when you're on the 85, because you'll fill it up. No matter how good the engine is on an RB, you're going to fill it up. You've got to keep that oil down in the bottom, you've got to keep it on the bearing.
What are the things that you're most nervous about when you take out a monster GDR?
From working with Platinum and doing all this sort of testing, I think that measuring the block first is, to me now, is probably the most important thing. You've got to measure bore thickness and you've got to measure the hardness of the block before you build it. If it's not acceptable, just get another block and start again. So make sure you measure your block for hardness and bore thickness more than anything else. And the next thing to do is make sure the way to increase the strength of the block is just with a brace. So if you put an engine brace on these things, it massively increases the strength of the block, stops the twisting, stops the crack on the outside, even helps with the bores not splitting as easily. Just that little bit of preparation to the block is going to mean huge dividends later on when you're pushing it. Why crack a block on the outside at 500 kilowatts when you're building a 900 kilowatt engine is going to be pretty annoying.
Well, Andrew, thanks so much for coming down today and showing us through all this stuff and sharing so much of the knowledge and experience that it would be very rare to get this sort of insight before you start your adventure trying to build an RB. But before you go, this thing you've been hiding, just show me what is it?
Look at this. So we've already spoken about putting a brace on. Obviously 26s have the main cap and girdle is all integrated, so you kind of pull them all off together. And then you would have the brace separate. Other people have developed independent main caps and tried to join them together, but this from Platinum is the new big kahuna. This is main caps, girdle, and a brace all integrated to one. This thing is designed to handle whatever, like just throw it at it, it'll take it. I reckon we could, it'll stop main cap walk, which is obviously a problem once you go past 4 digits. It's going to stop block twist. I reckon we could put this back together with it.
Let's not try that, but man, this is making like that torsional, that twisting a thing of the past. So this one piece, put it together, tunnel bore, just
everything. 30 years of RB26 and we're still making stuff for them.
What sort of weight is in this thing? Like what is it and what parts does it replace on the RB?
Well, it's I think 22 kilos for this steel billet version. And it replaces obviously the factory main cap and sort of girdle that's all in one, because it's all one piece in an RB. So it replaces that. And if you were building a big engine that had a brace in it, you're effectively replacing the brace, the main cap, girdle, all in one with this.
I'm all for the insurance because I know that I'm keen on it, that all that money in machining and all of that stuff, like, yes, I'm sure this is overkill for what I would class as a 400 or 500 kilowatt street car. But in saying that, you've got so much money invested in it that
right.
having something like this, you may
Go
as
overkill.
well.
Why not? If you can go overkill, if you can afford to go overkill, do it. If you can't, just follow some of the advice that we give out on our channel about how to keep them alive on a budget, I guess, yeah.
All right, and in saying that, how do we find out more RB stuff? We've talked sort of briefly about all of this. Have you got anything more in-depth about the RB series?
We've done a whole bunch of Platinum Tech videos with Platinum Racing products where we do block testing, comparisons between all the different types of blocks with RB. Obviously, you've got different types. Our project GDR has evolved over 6 years of development. We've got articles on how to build a 10-second GDR. We've endless GDR information to find on our channel.
Okay, so we'll put a link up to the Motive YouTube channel. Go check it out, have a look through all of the RB tech there, and I'm sure you'll find out something that you're interested in. So, should you get an RB? The answer is most certainly yes. This is one of, if not, the most famous Japanese muscle engine of all time. They look right at home in a wide range of chassis like the Silvias and Skylines, but you're like me and interested in the rusty stuff, they look pretty good in a Datsun manufactured GDR. Admittedly, these are getting to the stage where they're probably best left as a collector car, and you're better off finding a 240Z or 260Z to start with. Which variant should you use? Well, it all depends on what you can get your hands on and what you're going to do with it. RB20, RB25, RB26, RB30 are all available somewhere, and each of them sound amazing. There's huge aftermarket support for the RB series, and with most parts available off the shelf, things like cranks, rods, pistons, camshafts, stud kits, gaskets, they're normally just a click away. All you have to decide is whether you want one cam or two, one throttle or six, 2 litre, 2.5, 2.6, 3 litre, or a stroker kit that might be 3.4 litre. Whether you want to gear it towards a smaller spoolie street turbo or a giant dyno killing monster, all that stuff's up to you. And I think the beauty of the RB is so many uses and so many choices really do make this one of the great ultimate all-rounders. Well, my name's Scott. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.